Okay, hello. This is going to be a very basic tutorial on screens in Kivy. I'm going to basically just make a 3-screen setup and show you how you can switch between them. But as I said, very basic. So I'm going to start off. The first thing we need, as you can see, I have a basic setup here. I should say now that if you really don't know anything about Kivy, this isn't the tutorial to start with. I'm assuming some basic knowledge of how to get a basic script running so you get a window open and knowledge about maybe buttons and layouts and things like that. So if you don't know about that stuff, please go and learn it. I have a couple of tutorials one on box layout, one on grid layout, so you could check those out. But I strongly advise going to the Kivy website, and they have some very good tutorials there. One on how to make a game of Pong, and then there's a couple of others as well. So anyway, without further ado, you can see what I have here. I also just have a very basic KV file opened there. But what I'm going to do first is, well, I need to import the ScreenManager. So it's from kivy.uax.screenmanager. Import ScreenManager. Sorry, I'm just going to move something. It's really annoying me. Okay, I hope you can still hear me. ScreenManager and screen. Okay. Now, so I have my starting point here, basically. Screens app run. So we're going to run this. Okay. Here, I'm actually going to create my ScreenManager class. So I'm just going to call it manager, and it inherits from ScreenManager. And I'm going to give it I'm going to import object properties, because I need to use those. So from Kivy properties, import object property, which I will now use here, and you will see why in a minute. So I'm going to have one called, just keep it simple, screen1 is going to be an object property. Thank you, autocomplete. Screen2. And please follow along with this if you can, so you're not just sitting there bored. And so you could open your IDE of choice and fill in the code that I have here already. Okay, so I've got these 3 object properties here: screen1, screen2, screen3. Fantastic. Now I'm just going to this is my app class here, which you should know that we basically always have in a Kivy app. I'm just going to set up the build method here to return the ScreenManager. Okay. So this is the ScreenManager. As I said, we're going to have 3 screens, and I've set them up here as object properties in screen1, screen2, as screen1, screen2, and screen3. The reason I would do that, the only reason I can think of that I would do that anyway, is because I want to be able to access these from the KV file. And I'm going to set up manager here, which is our screen manager, as a root widget in the KV file. Now I'm going to give it an ID, and this is going to be important, and the ID is ScreenManager. Nice and simple. I'm also going to connect it to these object properties I have here. So we have screen1, screen2, screen3, and I'm just going to give them the same name in the KV file, because I find that easiest. myself. You may find something else to be easier for you, but so screen 1, screen 2, screen... I'm not very good at talking and typing at the same time. Okay, so I've basically linked these up. I'm now going to be able to access these 3 screens with their names, which are kind of like, well, let me show you. It all will become clear in a moment. I'm going to set up my, I need to set up my 3 screens here as classes. So I'm going to have class, we'll call it screen 1. And this inherits from the screen class, which really makes sense if you think about it. I'm just going to say pass for the moment. Class screen 2, also a screen, and class 3, or class screen 3, I should say. Also a screen. So as you can see here, hopefully it's starting to feel like it makes sense. I have the screen manager and 3 screens, and this manager is, as you can imagine, well, it's going to manage these 3 screens. So now remember, I've got these 3 object properties set up here: screen 2, screen 1, screen 2, screen 3. I'm going back to my Kivy file where I've kind of linked them up here, and so this is the root widget now. Manager, which is our screen manager class, is a root widget over here in the Kv file. Now I'm going to create instances of each screen within this root widget, like so. Screen 2, so screen 1, screen 2, screen 3. Done. Okay, so as you can see, root widget, as you know, angle brackets, and then these instances within the root widget, no angle brackets. Now, what I need to do is I need to give these 3 screens their IDs, because that is what is going to help manager know which screen is which. So this one I have given the ID, well, this is the name it has out there in the main.py file, screen 1, as you can see here, which is linked to an object property which gives me the ability to do this. And so this is what it's called out in main.py, and this is what it's called here. This is the name it's linked to. I've just given them the same names because I find that easiest. So I give it the ID screen 1. And I'll give the other 2 their IDs. Screen 2. And 3. What I also need to do is give them each a name, and I'll tell you why now in a moment. But first, let me just do it. Screen. Let's call it screen. Well, yeah, screen 1, like that. Name. Screen 2. I do like to make the name different from the ID, just to avoid confusion. Oops. Because it's used for different purposes. I'll show you what those are now. Okay, so I have the ID and the name of each, and probably most importantly, well, just as importantly, I need to tell each screen who its manager is, who the boss is. So we've got manager, and, well, the manager is going to be screen manager. That's why I gave manager an ID. So each one is going to have they all have the same screen manager. Screen manager. Copy and paste this here. Okay. So that's basically all I need to do right now for my screen manager in the KV file. So you can see what I've done. I gave it an ID so that I gave it this ID so that I could tell each screen who its manager is. I've given them each their own ID so that they can, which corresponds to this, so that they can link back to the main.py file and the manager class there via these object properties. And they each have a name, and I will show you what those are for in a moment. But as you can see, I've set up the three screens as classes here, but I also need to set them up over here if I want them to actually, well, I prefer to use the, I want to give them each a button, basically. And that button, when you click it, is going to take you to the next screen. I could do that here, but I like doing it in the, I could use the add widget method to add the buttons here, but I'm going to do it here because I think it's cleaner, I prefer it. So screen 1, thank you, autocomplete. Literally just going to give it a button with the text. Well, I'm gonna make the button go to screen 2. I hope this doesn't get too confusing, but this button is going to go to screen 2. So you got screen 2 and okay, so as you can see, I have changed the button texts to reflect what screen we're currently on and the screen that the button will take us to. But in order for the button to actually do something, right now it's just a button with some text on it. For instance, if I hit run here, oh, oops, can't do that. If I run here, we'll see that we do indeed get the first screen. It says we're on screen 1, go to screen 2. If I press, this is just one big button by the way, it's just filling the screen. If I press it, nothing happens. That's because I have not set, well, I haven't told it what to do when I press the button. And I do that with the onPress method. I could do it with onRelease as well, but I'm going to do it with onPress. So here's where the screen name comes in for each screen. So on press, I want root, let me just write it out here and then I'll explain it. Root manager current to equal screen 2. Now, what this means, root. So when the button is pressed, I want root, that is this, the root widget it's referring to, screen 1, manager. So it's root's manager, so screen 1's manager. What is screen 1's manager? Well, what did we tell it down here? We told it that its manager is screen manager, which is this, which is manager. So when we press this button, screen 1's manager, which is this screen manager down here, called manager, its current screen will then be set to screen 2. So when we press the button, screen 1's screen manager is going to set its current screen from screen 1 to screen 2. Okay? And I'm going to give each one of these buttons a very similar setup here. So when we press the button on screen 2, we want it to go to screen 3, and when we press the button on screen 3, we want it to go back to screen 1, so we're just going to be in a sort of a cycle. Now let's run this and see what happens. Okay, on screen 1, go to screen 2. Boom. On screen 2, go to screen 3. and we're on screen 3, and we can go back to screen 1, and that'll just kind of go on forever. Not very pretty, but as you can see also, there's a particular type of transition that it's doing here, where it's kind of, the next screen is kind of shoving the old one out of the way. You can actually change the transition, and I'll just show you quickly how to do that. I don't know what the default transition's called, but you import it from the ScreenManager UX, that's ScreenManager as well. So I'm going to import a wipe transition. There's not that many transitions that will look good with just a button. Now where do I put this? Okay, so I take the wipe transition, and I go down here. I'm going to say m equals manager transition is equal to wipe transition. Thank you, autocomplete. And I have to call it like this, or I'll get an error. So I actually have to call it, as you can see there. Okay, I'm just going to return m, and that should have changed the transition that we see. So when I press this button, we should see a new type of transition. And there we go. Oh, it's kind of like a radar sweep. Very nice. So on screen 1, go to screen 2. On screen 2, go to screen 3. On screen 3, go back to screen 1. And we have our 3 screens set up. Just like that. And, I encourage you to just go and experiment with this. Let's say you wanted to have an app or a game where each screen does a completely different thing. You want a menu screen, a settings screen, a game screen. Well, you could obviously name these anything you want. But where would you put the code? How would that work? Well, it's obviously, I want to keep this simple, so I'm not going to go that heavily into it. But basically, this manager setup here in the Kivy file, you would pretty much leave that, I think, as it is, if we're talking about a simple app. That you don't really need to worry about once you've got it set up like this. Up here, you could obviously do all sorts of things. You could design each screen the way you want it. If it's going to have buttons that trigger, like for instance, this button could have triggered something in one of the classes here that does something, whatever you want it to do. One of the screens could, be filled with images. If you have a game, images and animations and things that are set to fire off when you enter the screen. For instance, screens, I encourage you to go and look at the docs on Kivy.org, but screens have methods such as on enter. That's what. So if we wanted something to happen when we entered the screen, we would go on enter, and anything that's inside this method will happen just as the screen is entered. There's an on leave method. So if you wanted to reset all the scores when you leave the game screen, going back to the menu screen, you could do it in on leave, and then when you re-enter, you could have it all set up again, and from scratch. There really is a lot you can do with this, but this has been the basic setup, and I hope it's been of some help to you. And thank you for watching. Any comments you have, please do leave them down there, and any constructive criticisms or anything would be much appreciated. Thank you very much.